Hello everyone, this is Simon from writtenlegalenglish.com and welcome to this video where we're going to have a look at the text I showed you on Tuesday, and I'm going to explain how I would have redrafted that text. So let's get started. Okay, so I asked you to have a look at this official translation of the Polish provision, Article 18.2 of the Polish Banking Act 1997, and I asked you to think about a couple of things, three things: the use of shall, sentence structure, and the active voice. Hopefully you've thought about this and you've come up with some different possibilities of how you can draft this in an easier way. Now, in a lot of my videos I've said when you're redrafting, you should always think about the context that you're trying to explain it to a client or someone who doesn't know the area of law. So you've got to explain it either orally or explain it in writing in a clear enough way so they can read it once and know exactly what's going on and then be able to make an informed decision. So if you haven't tried to redraft this text, then pause the video now, have a quick think about it, and then unpause the video and I'll explain how I would do this. Okay, on Tuesday I said that I've done lots of videos on shall, so this is going to be a very brief discussion of why shall is a word we should not be using in legal English. And the main reason is because it has been ruled by the courts as being ambiguous, which means it could be understood in 4 different ways. It could be understood as must, which creates an obligation, as should, which is advisory, so it gives you advice, may as regards permission, and will as referring to the future or a possible future promise. So those are the 4 ways that we can interpret shall as ruled by the courts. And of course there is this 5th option, which is where lawyers have an annoying habit of using shall as a legal breath. So they just throw it into sentences because it makes the sentence look good, but it doesn't actually communicate a message at all. It's just sitting there for no reason whatsoever. I can't remember exactly who coined the term a legal breath, but it's somewhere in plain English doctrine and it stuck with me. So as you're thinking about what does shall mean, is it creating an obligation? So the bank management must examine matters concerning and they must adopt resolutions? Or is it talking about permission? So they may examine matters. They can, but another body can't. Or they may adopt resolutions. So they can, but another body can't. Or is it about should? So is this best practice? So the management board doesn't have to, but it should examine matters or it should adopt resolutions. But then once again with should we don't have that sense of obligation. Or are we talking about the future? So not right now, but later on in the future this is an activity that they should be engaged in. There's no context here. So the first thing that we should do in order to work out what it means is to have a look at the original translation. Now, if we have a look at the original translation, and I'm not going to show that to you here, we'll see the language used in a different way. We'll see that the Polish doesn't communicate an obligation. It doesn't communicate something which is advisory. It doesn't convey or talk about permission. It doesn't talk about the future. In fact, it doesn't exist in the Polish version whatsoever. So when we look at the Polish version, and I've talked to a number of lawyers about this just to confirm my suspicions, what's actually being said here in this article is that it's a statement of fact. What it's saying is what the body has to do within the context of their responsibilities. So it's this person does this person does this. And that's all this article is trying to communicate. But then when you have a look at the English version and you have a look at what those translations or explanations or definitions of shall mean, then it creates an entirely different picture. Now, shall technically means the same as must. So this is the default position that lots of lawyers or readers have when they read shall. They see must. But then if you understand that in that way in the English version, then that's very different to the original Polish version. So the English translation, or rather this consolidated, because there are two official English translations. There's the lengthy full English translation, which translates every part of that act, and then there's a consolidated version. Think of that as the quick read, if you will. This consolidated version misses out a lot of the detail, which would allow us to understand that this is not an obligation, but rather just factually explaining what each person or each body does. So with that being said, how can we redraft this to convey the correct meaning? Well, the first part could be like this. Subject to the provisions of paragraph 1, the Bank Management Board examines matters concerning the bank's activity and adopts resolutions on these matters. Simple, easy, straightforward. Everyone can read that, and it's a lot easier to understand that this is just a factual description of what each body does. In this case, the Bank Management Board examines matters and adopts resolutions on these matters. And away goes any idea of obligation or permission or the future or something being advisory. The other thing you'll notice is the sentence structure. So I've created a shorter sentence with one message. Of course, this message has got two elements, but this is one message in general from the much longer original sentence, which communicates a number of messages. So let's have a look at the second sentence. Now, the second sentence is much more of a redraft. And I've said the president of the management board must ensure the bank implements these resolutions. Now here, there is a sense of obligation. The president of the management board is identified, and it's identified what this person has to do. So here, the appropriate use of must, I think, is okay. And as you can see, the second sentence concentrates on one message, and it's much more of a complete redraft of the information and the way it's being expressed in the original sentence. Okay, let me know what you think. Do you agree with my redraft or not? Polish lawyers, I'm particularly interested in what you have to say. There are other things that we could think about in terms of making the sentence clearer. We could look at, for example, subject to. Is there a different way to say this? You might have a look at the comma that I've used in the first sentence. You might agree with that or disagree with that. So there is still a few things to think about in possibly making further changes to make these messages easier to understand. In any case, if you've tried to do this, then please post it below this video or above this video, depending on where you're watching it, and let me know what you guys come up with. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like the video, subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any more of my content that I put out on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and of course today on Fridays. Okay guys, I'll see you soon.